Hello.
Our story begins in the clone barracks on the Resolute inside of Coruscant's atmosphere. Commander Appa had just received orders from the Chancellor himself, something about an Executive Order 66. Appa turned to the other men and asked them if the order made any sense to them. Some of the clones turned their heads towards their commander and questioned what he wasn't understanding. Appa looked around. A few of the men didn't know what was happening either. They were still very confused. The few troopers who understood the orders told Appa that their directive was to go to the temple and kill the Jedi for treachery against the Galactic Republic. Appa was typically one for following orders, but these sounded wrong. He believed it was a separatist conspiracy. Even though he took orders from the Chancellor's comm signal itself, nothing about this felt right. The other clones could see where he was coming from too. The fact that it legitimately could be a separatist plot felt reasonable. Kenobi was likely going to kill Grievous on Utapau, and the Seppies could be getting a little antsy. Plus, if it was actually the Chancellor, why would he be wearing a hood over his head? It seemed like the type of thing a commando droid would do. After all, the old ARC troopers, Fives and Echo, reported that being the case for their first mission on the Rishi Moon at the beginning of the war. The clones started to agree, but those who had their chips working started getting hostile with the others. They told their commander that by not following those orders, they'd be court-martialed, stripped of their command, and then executed for treason against the Republic. Appa may have been new to his post, and so he didn't have the extended seniority like Captain Rex would've, but he wasn't going to stand for this type of behavior. He told the troopers to stand down, and the trooper didn't. Instead, he took it upon himself to strike Appa across the face, before pulling his blaster and shooting the commanding officer in the chest. There was no stun either. The trooper then told everyone else that if they weren't going to comply with Order 66, then they would face the same fate. Appa cried out for a medic. The room was completely still until the medic ran over to help him. The trooper with the gun turned back and told him that if he moved another inch, he too would be shot. The other Order 66 infected clones were copying this trooper's motions. The tragedy for the clones that the executive order didn't work on is they were just confused. Their commanding officer was just shot without any merit, and now everyone was rebelling. Those without working chips raised their weapons and faced down the active troopers. It was a quick reflex. Half the men didn't have their weapons set to stun, everyone else didn't. It was chaos, and then the medic told the trooper that Appa needed assistance. Without a hint of hesitation, his wrist tilted down and aimed for Appa's head. Before the trigger could be pulled, one of his brothers fired a stun round, and the barracks subsequently erupted into chaos. Men were killed, stunned, and wounded. They ducked behind cover, not knowing which of their brothers had active or inactive chips in their heads. This alerted other parts of the ship, especially being that the encrypted comm chatter for the clones was bursting out with the same order, execute Order 66. These clones ran to their brothers in the barracks, some of them being killed the second the doors opened. It was pandemonium. Inside the bridge, Admiral Yularen gave Skywalker clearance to land, and then he told him to be wary. The entire ship was turning into a slaughterhouse. Troopers with active chips were much more aggressive to their brothers, and it was costing the lives of several clones. This was entirely due to the fact that the clones with active chips firmly believed everyone not cooperating with them was a rebel to the Republic. Order 66 needed to be taken with seriousness, and they needed to follow orders immediately. As Anakin received the intel from Admiral Yularen, his act dropped. Initially, he planned on meeting up with the clones, taking their gunships to the surface, and then marching up to the side of the temple. But he was confused now. What were the clones doing? As he ran around the corner, one of the men who wasn't even wearing his armor told the general that there was something wrong. The clones kept repeating the same order over and over again. They also said something about being good soldiers. Anakin didn't even register what happened to Tup or Fives. He just ran forward, looking to stop the conflict. He ignited his lightsaber and told them to stop what they were doing, but they barely listened. All of them were informed via Palpatine's hologram that Skywalker was not a Jedi anymore, and therefore not a target of concern. The clones told him to get down and out of the way. The others were out of their mind or something. The pure confusion was enough to put any clone into fight or flight. Then Anakin looked down to the dead troopers, one of which being Commander Appa, and for the first time he realized that perhaps his actions were wrong. But this little self-realization didn't stop anything. One of the active chip clones threw a thermal imploder across the room, and it ripped a hole in the side of the Resolute, not to mention throw Anakin into a wall and send a couple dozen men to their deaths. When Anakin came to, the clones were moving out. Most of those with inactive chips had stunned those with active chips, but the damage had been done. He rubbed his head, asking himself what he had done. As he looked over, one of the men noticed he was getting up, and they ran to his side. They gave him a debriefing, one that revealed there was an issue with this galaxy-wide. The Coruscant Guard was active, but they weren't going anywhere near the temple. Instead, they were having a non-divisive move to the Senate building. It was still the same case of half the chips working, but they weren't hunting or killing Jedi, so no need to worry about the order going off in their minds. They were just going to the Senate building to defend it, with whatever Order 66 was. On Keda Nemodia, Arc 170's trailed Plo Koon, one of his men taking a literal bullet for the Jedi General, when their captain tried to target him. On Felucia, Ayla felt the change from her clones and defended herself as Bly and a couple other men were killed for betraying the Republic. Ayla escaped into the tree line and barely survived. On Kalar, Depa Balaba and Caleb Doom escaped with the Bad Batch, Crosshair's chip not activating when the order came in. Kiadi-Mundi still got gunned down. No need to worry about that. Bakra didn't need to have an active chip to follow that order. Cody followed the order on Utapau, but one of his men tackled him, resulting in the death of the mutineer. Similar to what happened on Coruscant, the clones turned on each other, even in the heat of combat. This wasn't because the inactive troopers were defending the Jedi, it was 100% because the active clones believed the inactive clones were traitors, and due to the inactive clones refusing to kill their brothers, a lot of innocent men were killed in the process. Back on Coruscant, Anakin again tried to stop the clones, but they had since made a push against the active troopers. The men who hadn't reacted to Order 66 were coming out on top, simply because they were trying to defend their brothers. Medics were rushing the hallways and got to work. The Jedi Temple reacted immediately, thanks to Sindralic getting information from around the galaxy, not to mention the change in the Force, because while some of the most elite Jedi survived the ordeal, there were still thousands of Jedi killed in the execution of Order 66. It just wasn't nearly as effective as Sidious hoped it would have been. Anakin, upon trying to stop his troopers, looked down and saw a dead clone. Their eyes were rolled backwards and they weren't even wearing their armor. They were sleeping, woke up to the commotion, only to die to one of their own brothers. Anakin then remembered Fives and Top. All of a sudden, his anger grew. He realized that there was one individual behind this. Palpatine was behind everything. He didn't understand. How did he never see this? Truthfully, he must have been blind, because how didn't he figure out that Palpatine was behind everything that happened? Every time Padme's life was risked, it was because of Sidious, and now Anakin would take his anger out on the Sith Lord. As Skywalker made a move for the executive building, he informed the Battle Master of the Jedi Order that Palpatine was behind the recent activities. He was heading there to stop him. He was the Sith Lord. Sindralic tried to stop Skywalker, but he turned off his comms and continued forward. When Anakin landed, he had no issues. He simply walked past the guard without having to struggle or anything. Once he entered the Emperor's office, Palpatine was collecting the data chips on everything he needed to prove the assault made by the Jedi. As a result, he turned all the cameras and microphones back on. When he saw Skywalker, he was confused, but Anakin demanded to know why he would lie. Palpatine got defensive very quickly and informed Anakin that he didn't know what he was talking about. Skywalker said that when Tup and Fives died, they had cracked the code. Fives was angry with Palpatine because he knew the truth, not because of anything else. Everything Palpatine was a liar and a fiend to use the war to get power. Anakin clenched his fists and then pointed at Palpatine, telling him that he lied. Sidious just watched his very angry pupil and then reminded him that they could save the ones he cared about from dying. Anakin used the Force to crush a chair in front of Sidious. Anakin called the bluff. He knew Sidious didn't care about his family. Sidious only wanted one thing, and that was power. He would do anything to get it. Anakin also noted one key thing that Sidious said right in front of him. Palpatine said they could discover the secrets together. Palpatine didn't even know how to do it, and Anakin felt so stupid for blindly falling for it. Skywalker ignited his lightsaber and stormed forward. Palpatine found amusement in this, telling Anakin that he was making a mistake. As Skywalker swung forward, Sidious blocked and parried. The speed of Palpatine was remarkable to Anakin. He was pushed backwards, and he realized that perhaps he was in over his head. Sidious thrusted forward, playing a very similar game to the one he played against Windu. This time, Anakin wouldn't have the same skill to keep up with him. Windu was an exceptional talent, and Skywalker hadn't reached that stage in his life yet. Sidious also wasn't trying to kill him either. Their blades passed back and forth. As they did, a commotion could be heard outside the room. Neither of them noticed. Anakin was using all of his anger and power. Sidious pushed him further, because he wasn't going to kill a future pupil. There wasn't even a doubt in Palpatine's mind that Skywalker would still fall to the dark side. It would be very simple for him. He laughed and laughed as their duel continued. Anakin finally took an advantage, throwing his blades forward, and Sidious sidestepped with a quick movement. Then he heard a man's voice tell him to stop. Sidious used electricity and shot Skywalker into the back, throwing him against the wall. When Sidious turned around, the Temple Guard was present with Shaak Ti, Coleman Kaj, and Sindralic. He could fight all this potentially. Sidious raised his blades, and Anakin watched. The next thing Anakin knew is he was being pulled out of the room. Sidious was cutting down Temple guards as one of them fought alongside him. Battlemaster Sindralic was able to hold his own, as was Shaak Ti, but Coleman Kaj and a number of other Temple guards were struck down. When Anakin woke up, everything had seemingly changed. Ahsoka's vessel made it to Coruscant, but she had to escape with the help of Rex and Jesse. Rex's chip still activated, but Ahsoka was able to get him the help he needed, thanks to distractions in the vessel. Inside the Senate building, the clones took it back over, but before their escape, Sindralik was able to pull all the data from the room, meaning he had the conversation with Windu, with Anakin, the execution of Order 66, and everything. He could use these against the Chancellor, and he planned on doing so. The Jedi Temple was a fortress now. When Anakin woke up, Sindralik demanded the frequency of Padme, or somebody else he was close to, and he gave it without ever thinking. Sindralik then sent all the information to her so that she could be ready. Anakin missed a lot while he was unconscious. The temple stood tall, and there were Venators moving towards it. The defenses were up and activated. They wouldn't be able to hold off from an orbital bombardment though. At the same time, Sidious called for an emergency session, not knowing that Sindralik got all the recordings from his office. As the Senate convened, he informed them that there had been a Jedi rebellion, but Padme Amidala was able to stand against it. There was enough time where she could gather all the information she was given by Sindralik via hologram to prepare a stand against whatever Palpatine had to say. Not to mention, with Rex having removed his chip and Jesse doing the same since their arrival, they too were able to deliver information over hologram to disprove anything that Sidious tried to say. Sidious was very displeased with the outcome of everything, but he used this as a chance to stall. He had backups in place, and they were already working, but if the Jedi called his bluff, which they did, he would have had to alter his own backup plans. Grand Inquisitor was already taking Maul off of the vessel that he arrived in, still inside the sarcophagus. Grand Inquisitor did need to kill a couple of clone troopers to do so, but they were disposable, no need to worry about wasting their lives. Sidious fought for hours inside the Senate, informing them that it was all a lie, but the information Padme had was valid, and she continued proving point after point after point. Sidious could see the Senate rally against him, which truthfully was a terrible shame. They would all die at one point or another. He tried to tell them that she was lying, but with concrete proof from holograms and clone troopers themselves, it was clear there was a greater threat here. Also, a big reason the Senate was willing to support this is because with Dooku and Grievous dead, the war should come to an end. So they could resume democracy without a wartime leader. It would just require them electing a new chancellor or an interim at the very least. Because Palpatine wouldn't just leave the Senate defeatedly, the clones with inactive chips would come in and aim their weapons at Sidious. They would fire at him, but being the masterful Dark Lord of the Sith, he'd be able to escape. The Senate felt like they cracked the case on this one, and with all the control in their hands, they did everything in their power to end the chain of executive orders that Sidious had. This did reposition the Venators that were closing in on the temple, but it did not solve the issues of the execution itself. There were still thousands of clones and Jedi that had been killed as a result of the Order. Now the Republic would have to pick up those pieces. Due to the plan going wrong for Sidious, he met up with Grand Inquisitor over Coruscant. After that, they departed for Mustafar. He had his plans set in place to build an empire. He would now have to be the one that forced it into construction. As they made their way across hyperspace, Sidious said hello to an old friend. Palpatine had no issue with using Grand Inquisitor as a student, but he would prefer someone with the skill and power of Maul. However, he needed to make sure Maul would serve him. Obviously, due to being stuck inside the Mandalorian sarcophagus, Maul was petrified of his master, and just like his reaction after Sidious killed Savage, Maul would be willing to do anything to have mercy from his former teacher. Sidious predicted that with the fallout of Order 66, there would be some Jedi leaving the Order. Grand Inquisitor was set to be their anchor. At the same time, the three of them had some heads of state to kill. The Separatist Council on Mustafar had done their job. Sidious would now be taking complete control over the droid armies, including those that had been held in reserve since the second year of combat. Inside the Jedi Temple, Sindralik was doing damage control. Because he didn't watch the full tapes, he didn't know Anakin was responsible for Windu's death. He just saw that Palpatine had the tapes for execution of Order 66, and so he assumed it had all the information he needed on it. Inversely, because Padme and her allies had time to go over the information inside the data chips, they saw what Anakin did. Assuming it was addressed within the ranks of the Jedi, they didn't bring it up. Instead, they were focusing on the rebuilding of democracy and filling up the hole left behind by Palpatine. Skywalker was trying to be as helpful as he could be, but there wasn't really anything he could do. Sindralik and Shaak Ti were the experienced masters on Coruscant. They were taking care of everything. Sindralik then tasked Anakin with getting a hold of his commander and making sure every clone in the Grand Army received the order to get rid of whatever chips caused all the damage. Anakin was able to do that, and with the help of Ahsoka, Skywalker could focus on trying to use some of the chaos to his advantage. Because Ahsoka was able to take a larger portion of the burden he was tasked with, Skywalker selfishly snuck into the restricted section to figure out how to save people from dying. Because of his actions, he would miss out on a pivotal moment in his marriage, the minute his wife gave birth to their twins. It was entirely because he was so focused on controlling the outcome of everything. He would be called from inside the archives after it was done and handled. As Skywalker went over, he would bring his little sister with him, because she was as much a family as anyone else. Anakin would be so happy in the moment, but there was a crippling thought in the back of his head. What if the chips didn't dysfunction? He never really thought about it, but he was about to march on the temple. What would he have done? It ate away at him so much that he couldn't properly enjoy the moment. On the bright side, at least Anakin and Ahsoka not being present didn't derail anything with the clones in getting rid of their inhibitor chips. Rex was able to take full control over the situation and then pass the orders on elsewhere across the Republic. Because the surgery was simple, most of the clones were able to get rid of the little bug and free themselves from the clutches of evil. Because of the Senate, they were able to get rid of Order 66. Ahsoka was grateful that Anakin was willing to include her into this side of his life, but even she could tell that there was something off with him. It was entirely because Anakin had one goal and one motivation: revenge. He wanted to rip Palpatine limb from limb. If he executed Order 66 himself, he wouldn't have ever forgiven his own actions. Skywalker paced back and forth in the room, pleased that Padme survived, overjoyed at the birth of their twins, but filled to the brim with bloodlust. On the more pleasant side of things, the new parents got to use the names they chose. Because they didn't want to know what kind of kid they were going to have, they came up with names for a boy and a girl. Padme chose Luke for the boy, and Anakin agreed with it. He chose Leia for the girl, and she agreed with that. Now they could use both their selected names for their twins. It was all sorts of pleasant, but there was still a business to attend to. Anakin and Ahsoka would leave at some point, due to a request from Plo, who was the quickest to return from Coruscant due to being on Cato Nemodia. The Council was eager to know anything Anakin might know. Due to the files being in the hands of the Senate, the Jedi didn't need to look into them. Plo was curious to know if Skywalker might know wherever Sidious may have gone, but he didn't. Of course, then a thought crossed his mind. He informed them that it was possible Sidious went to Mustafar. Plo quickly informed Syndralic to rally any and all council members on Mustafar, but when the Jedi eventually arrived, it was too late. Everyone was slaughtered, and from what they could tell, the controls were slashed, so no one could shut down the droid armies. However, as was apparent, the droid armies had more forces than the Jedi originally believed they had. The Council sent the readings back to Coruscant, which would make its way into the Senate. The Republic had to prepare itself for a second clone war. This time they'd be fighting against their known enemy, and they wouldn't have to deal with another Order 66. Yoda, on the other hand, felt great shame about the entire thing. He should have followed the vision to the work so that he and Anakin could have stopped Sidious and Dooku together, but his foolishness cost them thousands of Jedi and clones. At least the Jedi Temple and the Order itself still stood. That was the only silver lining out of all of this. The Jedi still had a fighting chance against the forces of evil. What followed would be months of galactic war. However, just because Sidious had reinforcements didn't mean he automatically made a push back into the mid-rim. His forces were stagnant, and they were stuck in the outer rim. The clones were fighting with vengeance, the Jedi were moving harder than ever before, and the Republic had a huge pool of recruitments. As it turns out, Sidious planned on instituting a TK Trooper program, and instead of letting all the armor and weaponry go to waste, the new Chancellor, a Quarren man named Christo, opened up recruiting. Because Palpatine betrayed the Republic, people were eager to serve alongside the clone troopers and take the fight to the Sith. This went alongside the projects hidden within the Republic shipyards. Sidious had heinous plans, and because of them, the Republic decided, why let them go to waste? There were now more troopers, new vessels, new troopers, and new vehicles ready for the war on the Outer Rim. Due to the alliance between Sidious and Maul, the Sith were able to use Maul's contacts to combat the rise of the Republic military, and so the fight very quickly became the Outer Rim versus the Galaxy. The former Separatists saw that Sidious and Dooku were allies and betrayed every ideal Dooku instilled into their government. They rallied with Chancellor Christo and took the fight to the Sith. Due to the fact that there was no name for this new faction, the word Sith began to circulate around. The public was informed what the Sith were, and why they needed to be destroyed, and so aside from the various corporations that Sidious took control over, the entire galaxy stood together to fight the Outer Rim. This didn't mean the Sith forces were outmatched either. They had the full power of the Separatist military at their hands. Alongside that, they rallied together crime syndicates. This led to a total stall in the outer edge of the galaxy. The end of the Clone Wars was set up to have a Republic victory, which meant that huge Separatist holdouts in the mid-rim crumbled. Cato Nemodia, the siege that started before Ahsoka's trial, was the only Separatist fortress in the core. Without any support from anywhere else, the Republic very quickly and simply cut off the Outer Rim. There were locations within the Outer Rim that were defended. For instance, Plo Koon and the Wolfpack went down the Ryloth to serve with Cham Syndulla and Captain Hauser. The Jedi did a great job of taking care of their frontline bases, and it pinned the Sith into a circle. It was just a matter of time until they broke. because despite the Sith forces maintaining control over foundry and shipyard systems, no amount of forces could keep the entire galaxy away from them. As for Anakin Skywalker, he felt a great burden. The death of Mace Windu and a couple thousand Jedi and clones were on his hands. If he allowed Sidious to be killed by the Master of the Order, all of this could have been prevented. Of course, the Republic could have vilified the Jedi, but he didn't know. All he knew is he was responsible for cutting off Mace's arm, and everything that led to these events. The burden ate away at him like a virus, and he tried to tell someone. He just didn't have the heart to. Not Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Padme, or Rex, even though Padme did know. He couldn't get it off of his chest, and so it sat there idly, just like him, waiting on the front lines for the outcome to find its conclusion. He did see combat, but not like when the war was raging with the Separatists. Each strike made by the Sith was intentional, and the Republic strategists knew that, so they built plans to trap the Sith, and they worked. Every time the Sith made a misstep or an assault, they'd get boxed in and destroyed. What bugged Anakin the most is that he was a galaxy away from his family. Padme was obviously alright because she had friends, and C-3PO was a perfect nanny, but he just wished he could be there supporting her. She knew he was doing all he could do, and she understood their predicament. Neither of them held any resentment for the other, only love and care. Skywalker waited eagerly for the war to come crashing down, and when it didn't, he realized he needed to confess his crimes to someone. Because Sidious was out here, Yoda and Ahsoka joined up with Skywalker's fleet. They were moving together for a number of reasons, but the most important was because Yoda knew that Sidious would come for Skywalker again. This created more pressure for Anakin. He trained harder than ever before, practicing his technique and preparing for his final showdown with Sidious. He knew it would come, and he had to be ready. Due to the stress radiating off of Skywalker, he and Master Yoda would have a discussion, one of which he would finally reveal the truth to Yoda. It was difficult for him, and he actually burst into tears over it. This had everything to do with it building up for month after month after month. He locked it all in his chest, and he needed to release the tension. It was tearing him apart. Yoda was similar to how he was on Coruscant before these events. He was understanding, and he was treating Anakin with respect. He saw the actions as wrong, and without the context of Padme, they were very hard to understand, but he truthfully admired Anakin's resistance. The full story wasn't told to Yoda, so from what he understood, Anakin left the office, went to the clones, changed his mind, and came back to fight Sidious, which to Anakin basically happened. It was a stretched version of the truth, but regardless of that, Yoda believed that for Skywalker to resist Palpatine after years worth of grooming, he should be proud of himself. The loss of Windu was a tragic one. He was truthfully one of the best the Order had, but the loss of those thousands were horrific. However, Yoda was still trying to see the light in this, and so he reminded Anakin how many lives he saved by going back. By fighting the Emperor and giving Sindralic time to arrive, he helped secure a future for the galaxy. Who knows what would have happened if Sidious gained control over the Senate. Anakin and Yoda grew tighter as a result of this, and the Grand Master, in a way, took Skywalker under his wing. Yoda always wanted the best for Anakin, so he trained the Chosen One on how to defend himself from someone like Sidious in case they weren't together when a fight ensued. This continued for more months. The Sith were elusive, and their military continued holding off its territory. Both the Republic and Sith forces continued to grow, but the Sith couldn't compete with the entirety of the United Republic front. Finally, a seam bursted, and the Republic broke in. The Sith were struggling. No one had joined the Sith. All the Jedi were united with each other, just as the clones were, especially without their inhibitor chips thanks to the Senate. In a key battle over Geonosis, the third battle over the system, the Republic bounced in with a huge military, and with their fleet came Yoda, Anakin, and Ahsoka. It was a quick strike, and the three Jedi found a Sith flagship. It was their confirmed target, and similar to Yoda's vision, Skywalker would accompany him to the vessel. In the heat of combat, wings of LA-ATs fled the Resolute and landed on the flagship. Sidious, Maul, and Grand Inquisitor were present. Their challengers were Anakin, Yoda, and Ahsoka. Rex and Jesse fanned out across the ship, taking down battle droids and making a push for the bridge. As they were doing that, the three Jedi came across the three Sith in the tower on the ship. Sidious didn't want them aboard, but now they were. He wanted them trapped. And so, before the engagement could begin, the Sith flagship jumped into hyperspace. Without the flagship, Admiral Yularen and his forces would obliterate the resistance and win yet again over Geonosis and then on the ground. In hyperspace, a great duel would begin. Skywalker was locked on the Sidious, but Yoda reminded him of his place and pushed him into a fight against Maul. Due to having three opponents, the tower of the vessel erupted into chaos. Ahsoka moved out and struck up a duel with Grand Inquisitor. On Anakin's left, Yoda and Sidious toiled back and forth, and in the middle of the fight, Maul and Skywalker had a bone to pick. Maul hated Anakin and wanted him dead. He was the original key to everything. Now Maul would become the key to everything. Their blades slammed together. Anakin had plenty of reason for wanting to gut Maul, namely the death of Qui-Gon. The room lit with fury. The balance of everything was held in this moment. Sidious soon realized that the lack of space for him created a disadvantage when fighting against the likes of Yoda. He had a better chance against Yoda than Windu, simply because Vapad was such an unstoppable gift for that Jedi Master, one that Yoda simply just didn't have. Ahsoka and Grand Inquisitor were certainly a unique match, but Ahsoka was Anakin's student. Her unpredictability would throw Grand Inquisitor off just enough. Without anyone showing a sign of slowing down, Skywalker took a risk. He and Yoda used each other to propel themselves at the other's opponents. It was a sick and twisted move, essentially using the Force to launch the other at Maul or Sidious. The tactic blindsided the Sith. Maul was thrown backwards, due to the superior skill of Yoda, but Skywalker had to go defensive. Thanks to Yoda's training over the last several months, he was able to adequately defend himself from the likes of Sidious. Due to the mass confusion, Grand Inquisitor lost focus. He saw Maul tumble across the room and immediately thought he'd be blindsided by Skywalker, but he wasn't. This allowed Ahsoka to cut through his staff before kicking him in the jaw. She was then confronted by Maul, who came to assist the fallen Jedi. Yoda had turned his attention to Sidious to help out. Because of Maul's counter, Ahsoka lost her Shoto in a move. But in a quick strike, she blasted a control panel which sent flares of electricity into Maul's face. She jabbed forward and cut through his adamant and he fell down, just as Grand Inquisitor struck forward. Ahsoka's blade was cut from her hands and she fell back. He then threw his blade at her head, and with all of her strength, she gripped his hand and began fighting for control over his lightsaber itself. On the other side of the room, Skywalker was kicked in the head, and Yoda jumped in front of what would have been a lethal strike from Sidious. The Grand Master used the Force to push Sidious back as Anakin gathered to his feet. Yoda and him looked to each other, and a small nod came, and they moved in. Ahsoka was able to steal Grand Inquisitor's weapon, only for him to use the Force on her. Ahsoka's boots slid across the floor, and she looked up, watching Grand Inquisitor kick an injured Maul in the jaw before stealing his lightsaber and cutting down the Zabrak warrior. Ahsoka used a red lightsaber to continue her fight, as she struck at Grand Inquisitor. They picked up right where they left off, a toil between light and dark, but Ahsoka was able to seize an advantage, using the wall as an ally, jumping off of it and shoving Grand Inquisitor through a piece of equipment. In the move, she was able to decapitate him. At the same time, across the room, Sidious and Yoda moved like light, and Skywalker was keeping pace, doing everything he could to kill the Dark Lord. He didn't present any easy strikes though. Sidious threw his hands behind his head to block a strike made by Skywalker, which pushed him off balance, before kicking Yoda to the side. He could see Ahsoka charging him with her blue lightsabers in hand again. He thought this was the perfect opportunity to kill Ahsoka before singling out the other two Jedi. Lightning sped across the room, and just as Ahsoka saw it, she ducked under it. From the other side of the room, Yoda used all of his strength to keep Sidious locked in place for just long enough. Ahsoka slid under the lightning and her blades came out on the other side of Sidious's torso. When she looked up, she saw Anakin grinning, and with a smirk, she told him that she had 2 kills. Anakin laughed, but Yoda didn't really find the humor in it. In the hallways below the tower, Rex and Jesse pushed through the droid forces with their clones behind them. It was a mix of 501st troopers, some of them wearing Ahsoka's armor, others donning their blue gear, but they were able to find the command bridge and secure it by the time the duel was over with the Jedi and Sith. While there may have been a complete and total extinction of the Sith, their movement didn't die. Sidious, Maul, and Grand Inquisitor were just figureheads to the movement. The crime lords wanted absolute power, and so they continued the fight with the Separatist machinery. The victory over Geonosis would be a decisive turning point in the war, but the Second Clone War, or War with the Sith, or the Crime Syndicate War, whatever people were calling it these days, didn't come to an end until a year and a half after Geonosis, which was almost 3 years after the execution of Order 66. The victory would be shared galaxy-wide. Many of the people in the Outer Rim used the war with the Republic as a way to start a slave rebellion or uprising. These would obviously be shut down, but it was enough of a distraction to get the public to claim victory over the forces of evil. Due to the duel in the Sith flagship and the countless other missions in the Outer Rim, Yoda made a point to forgive the actions Anakin made during one of the most desperate hours of his life. Anakin would be permitted to remain a Jedi Master on the High Council if he wished. He would accept. Due to Ahsoka's exceptional skill during the war, she too would be given the role of Master. This was one of those rare circumstances, but it was very similar to how Plo achieved his rank of Master. The end of the war brought a great joy to the galaxy, but none greater than the one Anakin had when he saw the twins for the first time since their birth. He of course could see them over hologram, but nothing compared to the real thing. Due to the extremities of the war, veterans that spent the entire duration in the Outer Rim, like Skywalker, were given a leave of absence from the Council and other Jedi duties if they so wished. Anakin took this, and he was able to have 3 whole months with his family on Naboo. His family did include Ahsoka, Rex, and Obi-Wan, all of which having been informed at separate points during the war of his family. Because of their valor, the clones would be given pensions and protection from the Republic, as well as a Republic paid-for bill that commissioned the Kaminoans to reduce their accelerated aging. The bills would be a true and honorable way for the Republic to respect their soldiers. The citizens who joined up as TK troopers would also receive their medals and honors. When Anakin returned to the Jedi after 3 months with his children, he knew what he would do. Skywalker committed himself to be the best Jedi the Council ever had. Not for the sake of being the best, but because the Jedi could finally be something more than political allies. They meant something to the people in the Outer Rim. Their work to free those people became a rallying cry for the people of the Republic to go in and rebuild it. They would finally be given the care they needed, and the Republic would make sure they were given representation and treated fairly. The Outer Rim had a long way to go, but because the people were so well accepted by the Republic and the Jedi, it was easy for them to find themselves home within the Galactic Republic itself. As for Skywalker, he'd be the one who led the Jedi back into the Outer Rim, and to be the bringers of peace the galaxy needed. While Luke and Leia would never officially become Jedi, they were their parents' children, both of them becoming some of the best politicians the galaxy ever saw. This was because of the gifts of their parents bestowed upon them, their mother's prowess in the political arena, as well as the force of which their father taught them all about. Without the Sith and the crime families, the Outer Rim was finally given a chance to heal. The Jedi were the architects of the next 200 years of change in the galaxy, and their work would inspire not just citizens, but outlaws, criminals, and pirates to become better iterations of themselves. Those lost during Order 66 would be remembered as the heroes that started a chain reaction, one that brought the galaxy to a place of peace and harmony not seen in generations. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to Benjamin Wells, Django Fat Clone, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Piermark, Diamond Constant, Lord Tib, Darth Nemesis, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granddaddy Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewo 670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Sith Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Callie, Galaxy 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, Fortis Like Star Wars, Airbus, Rex Wolf, Man 3 First Names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and then before supporting the channel, smash that like button if you want to support me in other ways. Go check out the Patreon, super cool things on there. Otherwise, let's talk about the story. I wanted this to have the weight of Revenge of the Sith. I feel like the clones turning on each other is probably one of the most brutal things I've really ever put in a story, because it's so merciless. The way the clones with inhibitor chips act is just like ruthless, and so I wanted that to be really present in the story until the Senate removed Order 66 by just revoking the order, and so that was able to resolve the issue. But I wanted there to be an elongation of the war. I wanted it to feel like there was still something more that had to happen, and I think Sidious would genuinely try and take advantage of anything he could, and taking Maul and Grand Inquisitor into the Outer Rim to try and start a rebellion would be along his lines. I think with the movement the Republic already had going for it, they would basically be able to lock down the Outer Rim. Remember, the end of Revenge of the Sith is all Republic victories, so even if he takes over the Separatists, they have to recapture those planets, and without the ability to just capture them, they'd be in an unfavorable position. So I wanted that to be very present as a war began in the Outer Rim. So I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.